Welcome to another episode of The Horrific Podcast. We're two musicians who used to play in a band together and share a passion for scary movies. Each week we pick a different horror movie and dissect it to figure out what it was trying to accomplish, how well it did, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. If you haven't seen the movie we're talking about, then don't worry. The first half of the episode will be pretty high level and spoiler free, and then we'll play a warning before we start talking about any major plot twists in the ending. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the episode. Alright, so we actually watched this movie together when I was back in Oklahoma for my mom's birthday a few weeks ago, and then we went back to your place, and we recorded an episode, like an instant reaction episode on the spot.
Yeah.
And then I got back to Austin, and I realized that the gain on the recorder was too high and that the audio was just completely unlistenable. Mm-hmm. So here we are.
So you're coming back to Bartlesville so we can record it in person again?
I wish.
Oh, okay.
But we're going to do the next best thing, and we're just going to do a normal full episode now that we have our normal audio set up. But also, we've had some time to think about it, which I think this movie probably deserved.
I concur, my good man.
Yeah. So I'm trying to put a positive spin on it, even though it's kind of awkward to do this again.
Well, I don't remember what I said, so I'm in a good spot.
Well, that's because you didn't spend an hour trying to fix the
so if I
recording of the other one. Yeah.
Actually, if I change my opinion on some stuff, don't call me on it.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Also, act equally impressed with the good points that I make.
Okay. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up those good points right before you do.
Yeah, beat me to the punch. Present the ideas as your own. I like it. Yeah. But anyway, I'm glad that we get to do this, actually. I feel like there were enough layers to this movie to make it worth seeing twice and having some time to process. So, I'll do the summary and let's get into it.
Let's do it.
In 2019, as a follow-up to Get Out, Universal Pictures released Jordan Peele's Us. This movie follows a family of four who travel to their vacation home and are forced to confront a dark mystery from the mom's past. This movie originally premiered at South by Southwest in Austin in 2019 and came to theaters shortly after. It was made on a budget of $20 million and has currently made over $217 million at the box office. It is still in theaters, so you'll have to buy a ticket if you want to see it.
If you listen immediately. If you're listening in the future...
Oh, it may be somewhere else by then.
Probably on Amazon.
Questionably.
Yeah. If you're on the desktop version.
Yeah. So, what did you learn about this movie? I'm going to guess that there's some interesting fan theories and quite a bit of press about this movie.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of both of those. I stuck to just a couple basic facts about it. Because it's still new, where it's new and popular, and so trying to wean out what it's just like the stuff that people are just putting out there.
Oh, it's just like rumors flying around.
Yeah, I think so. And so anyway, I stuck to kind of basic things. So in this movie, Jeremiah 11:11, which we'll talk about a little bit, I'm sure. Jeremiah 11:11 comes up, which the Bible verse, I'm just going to read the Bible verse for everyone real quick.
Okay.
The Bible verse reads, "Therefore thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will bring evil upon them, which they shall not be able to escape. And though they shall cry unto me, I will not hearken unto them." So I'm just gonna read that. That's for what it is. I was curious on what it was during the movie, but anyway, so the whole Bible verse has its separate meaning to it, which we can't get into before the spoilers. However, I learned that the number 11 actually has a lot of meaning to this. So throughout the whole movie, you'll see 11:11, and it's like it's on a bunch of different things. But one thing. So 11, the number 11, I don't remember which mythology or whatever it is, but it means twin planes.
Okay.
So like there's basically like, different dimensions kind of thing.
Okay.
we'll get into. And then, so the other one, 11, supposedly supposed to be a spiritual gateway. The number 11 means spiritual gateway, which is like why Stranger Things supposedly has the character 11 in it, because it's like the spiritual, I mean, like the deeper meaning to it. I don't know. I've only watched the first season, but
okay, and also like the gateway to like a thing that has access to parts of reality that normal people don't, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Now as for 1111 itself, obviously shows up on the clocks, shows up on like a prize number is prize 11, I think. I mean, it's all over the place. So it's pretty interesting stuff. The next thing I have is this one. I just thought was kind of interesting and kind of cool because this movie has a ton of references in it, specifically like 80s references. Like at the very beginning of the movie, it's fixing to show like a Hands Across America, like it's commercial.
Like
it shows like movies next to the TV, and it's like blatant, like shows you the movie straight up. All those movies in there have like some tie into this movie, as far as like even with the Goonies. The Goonies is a movie on there. There's even like a line that's kind of used in this movie that was used in that movie, basically saying like we're the kings down here is what they said in the Goonies, and we're the kings up here is what is said in Us, or something to that effect. But anyway, so this one I think is pretty cool, and you may have heard this. So The Lost Boys was filmed basically had multiple scenes at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, which is the same carnival area that they were in at the beginning of the movie in the 80s. And there's actually there's a quote that the mom is saying, they're shooting a movie over there by the carousel, and there's a specific scene in The Lost Boys at the carousel at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk.
Interesting.
And so
okay,
it's basically saying like they were filming that movie at that time. So I thought that was kind of a fun little fact about it. But anyway, those are the only specific facts. It was also kind of hard to like read and watch things about this movie and not talk about like before the spoiler warning.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Anyway, so I thought that was kind of a fun tie-in. It's also kind of cool to like see, like, so the movies that they were referenced, or the movies that they had next to the TV. Like, if you look at the storyline of each of those, it has not like a full similar storyline, but it has like similar parts to it.
Yeah, it's like the movies that this movie references all together.
Yeah, and it's like you can definitely tell there's some influence there, and I think it's like Jordan Peele saying like, these are for sure my influences. Yeah, it's gonna happen. So
I feel like this movie was very similar to Get Out in that it wanted to be a good horror movie that also contained a lot of social commentary. But this one, I feel like, was a lot bigger and more complex. Like, just in everything that it did. There were more characters. It took place on, like, just a bigger scale.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think that it tried to do a lot more. And for the most part, it did a good job. But when we get to the other side of the spoiler warning, there were also some places where I feel like it overextended a little bit. But almost exclusively from the story perspective. As far as like the filming and the sound and just the general movie making, I thought it was done really well with a very high level of quality all around. Yeah. I mean, somehow they were like, still haven't been able to figure out, but it's his own style of like directing that like kind of helps this out. And it's, I don't know if it's like the wide angle shots or a lot of foreshadowing that he does with
with just shots in general, you know. But it's just kind of I mean, it's intense because it's like, man, this guy knows exactly what he's doing, you know. And I wonder if the way that this movie is received is specifically based off the fact that he kind of comes from like a comedy background. And it's like, oh man, not only is this guy extremely funny, he can make really good horror movies as well, you know, and direct and do all that. I don't know.
Well, yeah, no, I definitely think you're onto something with that. I think that, you know, you bring up a good point in that he has a very recognizable style, and a lot of that is, you know, creates the tone of the movie, which does have a lot of like really funny humor. It has a lot of depth to the story, and then the presentation of all of it is just like a really high quality, well made film. And so just sort of that combination of elements in that it does have that bit of, you know, humor that keeps you, you know, enjoying the experience, but it also has the intensity and the urgency and the suspense and that feeling of danger that, you know, really it is what we look for in movies, right? Like the whole point of watching a horror movie is that it's really exciting and there's a lot of stuff going on, and, you know, you're sort of on this journey with the characters, and it makes it really captivating. And I think that's what, you know, his style is for sure. It just kind of hits on all of those different points.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool because it seems like he's a legit fan of horror movies.
Oh, yeah,
and
for
it's
sure.
almost like he studied them. Like it's almost like he was a student of them, you know, the way that he presented, you know, he presents these movies, and or I guess he studied, obviously he's into show business, so he studied multiple forms, but horror movies specifically. And so it's almost like this is the graduated movies that you, like someone who graduates college you know, type movies, and then you have others that are, you know, just not saying he's not natural, but just like start from a young age, gets into it and kind of goes. But I think you can almost see like the fact that it doesn't seem like everything's so thought out. Like it's like this has to be the only thing that this guy focuses on for like however long he writes. I mean, it's just crazy to think about. Not normal, I guess. Yeah, I guess is what a professional has to do. But
well, and I think, you know, kind of talking about that, like being a student of the genre or whatever. Like I feel like his writing is definitely inspired by a lot of different places. And where I'm going with all this is I feel like the beginning of this movie felt very much like it was influenced by Stephen King, because it's like you have the family that's returning to their summer home where something scary happened to the mom as a kid, and there's lots of foreboding stuff going on, and you know there's some kind of bigger story that's going to get revealed, but it's kind of that slow burn in the beginning where you're being introduced to the characters. And and looking back now on Get Out, you know, it had a somewhat similar beginning, you know, with them traveling out to see the girlfriend's family. And so I think that throughout the movie, you know, and as you've already pointed out, there were a lot of things that referenced other things, but it's almost like the style is influenced and the content still feels fresh and original.
Yeah, I think I think that's kind of what, you know, good professionals do. You know, you take... Did I say... I may have said this last... Anyway, you know, they say, like, don't take 20 influences from one musician. You take, you know, one influence from 20 musicians. Yeah, I think Lemmy may have said that, which makes it legit. Anyway, but, you know, you could definitely see that here. And at least he's, like... It's also kind of refreshing, too, because, like, the humor that he adds in it is almost like at the right time, because things get pretty intense in horror movies. That's why we kind of watch them, and to get a little break from that is good. Yeah,
and it's a way of getting you to put your guard down too. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, so, put your guard down. Yeah.
But so I think what you're kind of getting into there, and one thing I wanted to talk about was, like, where does this movie fall on the spectrum of horror movies? Like, what does it do that's scary, or where do you think it sits in relation to other scary movies?
Initially, I guess my first thought as the initial scare is it's nighttime.
Yeah.
Like just looking at it from straight ahead, it's most of the movie appears to be at nighttime. It's kind of building up, like where you're trying to figure out what's going on throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And so it has that natural, like, afraid of the dark, being afraid of what's in the dark.
Yeah.
Scare. And then it kind of like opens up and you start understanding like I guess maybe like the deeper meanings to his movies or this movie specifically. And I think that even gets a little scary like after fact, the fact where it's like, oh wow, these are some very pretty valid points that he's pointing out here. But I think just as far as like the typical horror scares, it's just the suspense of what's going on. There's a lot of brutal killings in this movie.
That's actually exactly what I had written down, was like suspense and violence, and the balance of those two, because there was some build up and suspense in the beginning, but it really didn't take all that long before the first pretty like violent scene took place. And then that kind of made all of the future suspenseful scenes work better or feel more urgent, because you already knew that the movie wasn't pulling its punches on that front. So you were a lot more worried for the characters, because you knew that the danger was real and that this wasn't going to be the type of movie where everybody just kind of gets away every time. Yeah. So it was like everything was going to be a life and death struggle, basically. So, and there definitely were some really graphic scenes. Like, it wasn't a slasher or anything, but it was still pretty disturbing in a few of them.
Pretty brutal. Yeah, and I think also like who the like the bad characters or the bad guys or the who they end up being, I think is also like that adds an extra like scare to it, so which we'll touch base after the spoiler warning. Try not to give too much with this movie, but I think that also adds the extra scare to it, or adds to it.
Yeah, for sure. So before we get into saying something that's going to get us in trouble, who do you think would like this movie, or who would you recommend it to, other than the 217 million divided by the price of tickets, people who went to see it already?
It was about 50 tickets. So here I have this theory about this movie.
Okay.
I think because the movie's so popular, that you're gonna have a lot of people who are like, no, I don't want to watch this horror movie. It's a mainstream. Yeah. And I just want to tell them, like, no, you should definitely give this a shot. Like, just give it a shot and see if you like it. I recommend this movie to even non-horror movie fans. It definitely, the score, it's a horror movie, but I think that's one thing I think you and I do pretty good with our horror movies, is we don't care which ones, we just want to watch them. Like, we're fans of horror in general. So if you're a snob, just watch this movie. If you don't like it, you don't like it, but give it a shot just because. And I say that because I used to do that with music, and I've opened up my world.
I still do that with music, but go on.
If it's like butt country, it's my wife listens to that and it's like, ooh. But anyway, I just there's no one I wouldn't recommend it to. I think I think especially people our age, like our early 20s, we're we can almost relate with some of these movies that came out in the 80s, and the feel that he kind of helps portray throughout the movie, that it almost just, you feel like almost like you're at home. So let's say people our age, all people our age should watch this movie.
I like it. And also, I kind of felt like it was one where you didn't necessarily have to be a fan of horror to enjoy the movie, kind of like you were saying. Like, if you like Black Mirror, you'd probably love this movie. It's not so far into the horror genre that you are going to be turned off if you can't hang.
Yeah.
There, was some violence and stuff, but I wouldn't say more so than a lot of what's like on TV now. So, yeah,
it was definitely more than what I was expecting, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Just
especially
basing
after
that
Get
off
Out,
of-
because
yeah.
yeah,
Just basically off of Get Out, but
Yep.
yeah.
Cool. Well, then let's play that spoiler warning and talk about all the things that we've been trying not to say for the last 10 minutes.
Do it.
Warning, warning, warning. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. This is your warning. Warning, warning, warning. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. This is your warning. If it's not obvious enough, warning, spoilers.
Okay, now that we're here on the other side,
Yep.
I have my love and my hate for this week, but I want to preface that by saying that they both have to do with acting, because that was a thing we didn't talk about before the spoiler warning, because I wanted to get more into it, and I'm really curious to hear your take on these two topics.
Mhm.
So I'm going to let you go first, and then we'll come back and do mine.
So I do both of them?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. So there wasn't too many things I didn't necessarily care about this. I think one of the things, I can't really sum it down to one because it makes it look like, anyway, I wasn't a big fan of like his friends, like their friend family. What was it, the Tylers? I wasn't a huge fan of them. It just didn't seem like there was like that tension that they had as a couple.
Yeah.
It just didn't seem as natural as a lot of the other acting in part for me. Like the other acting felt, it almost felt like it was like bad on purpose in a way. I don't know. Maybe it was just the actors. I don't know. I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of that. I remember like it was also like confusing for me. A lot of this movie I was kind of confused with, like where it was taking, like at the end of it, it finally kind of came together, and then they threw in that little twist at the end, and it was like, well, did that need to be added? I mean, it's not like it was a bad twist, but it was just like, I'm not. You already made it this far. Like that would have been cool regardless, and then you had the twist, but the twist, it wasn't like such a big twist that it was just like, oh my god, this whole movie's changed. It was like, okay, I could just saw that happening. But anyway, so I guess those were the not likes. The things I did like was every single thing else about this movie.
Well, that really narrows it down.
No, I mean, yeah, I liked the idea of, the Shadow family. I personally liked how, like, their voices that they used, like the Shadow. It was kind of frustrating initially until like I started reading that they like legit put thought into like
how
trying to base this voice off of like so and so, and try to base it off of, it was like even the dad, Winston Duke, was talking about how he based his voice, and it was like, you were kind of just screaming the whole time. But anyway, so I enjoyed that. This might steal something from you because I remember we talked about it, but no, I'll let you. Never mind. So I enjoyed that. I liked. There was just a lot of aspects. It definitely reminded me of a movie from the 80s. I thought it was shot well. The family itself, I felt like actually seemed like it could be an actual family.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like it seemed real. Like the, even the minor arguments that they had and all that was real. And then the last thing is just, it had the complete suspense, or there's a lot of suspense throughout the whole movie. Like even when you saw who the Shadow people, there was still suspense on why are they here, where they come from, why aren't they just immediately killing them? I mean, just a whole bunch of that. That was the thing I didn't necessarily enjoy. They kill everyone else without even, like the Shadow people, they're killing people immediately. But this family, like, they delayed, and look what happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're able to fight back. So it's just like, okay, you gotta do it evenly. You gotta kill them all.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Don't hesitate.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense why I guess, what was her name? Adelaide?
Mm-hmm.
Why they didn't kill her, because she wanted to explain everything, but...
Yeah.
Anyway.
A lot of that, like, kind of segues nicely into what my love and hate were. I love the underground version of the main family, and, like, the real version. I thought that all of them together was just a really, really good, really well-acted package.
Yeah.
I like the way that the actors portrayed both sides of it. Mm-hmm. I felt like it was really, really good at having the effect that it wanted. So, like, the creepy version of the mom, and just the way that she walked and conducted herself, and the facial expressions and everything, it was interesting in the way that they portrayed it as polar opposites, and the way that even just the actors were able to look or to act. That's such a stupid way of saying it. The way that they were able to conduct themselves or have such a totally different vibe, even though it's like me on two sides of the same screen, I thought was just awesome. And that really contributed to the creepiness, because it's like capturing that sort of dark, evil version of a human and summing that up just in a person that you can see on the screen. And I thought that was just great. I mean, just super horribly creepy all around, which was exactly what it needed to be.
Yep.
What I hated, though, was the same dynamic with the Friends family, just like you were talking about. Yeah. Like, I feel like the underground version of the dad was almost like a bad comedian or something. Like, it didn't make sense at all.
Right.
And, like, the underground wife wasn't all that creepy, and the twins were just sort of, like, non-interesting and didn't really have any depth to the character. And I guess some of it was, like, they didn't really get developed nearly as much, but it left me thinking at the end, when they were leaving the friend's house, that, like, why was that scene even included? And I get that it displayed more about what was happening with the whole story, and that it wasn't just the one family that was being attacked by their doppelgangers, and it started a view of the mom that sort of had significance later. But it felt like that was going to be a really important scene, and in the overall sense of the movie, it didn't really feel like that delivered, and so you just spent a lot of time with that family that I didn't care for. I think that was one of the reasons why, right there, for sure. I mean, it definitely, like you were saying, it definitely, like, opened the door of what's going on. Like, that's where you kind of see it's happening to someone else, and, you know, they're able to watch the news there, but, you know, that chunk of the other family was just like they had an argument about looking outside. And it's like, we're both married, and it's like that when I get enough of that at home, okay?
It's like, I'm sure that people argue over that, but it's like, if my wife legit came up to me and said, hey, I think there's something outside, I would, like, look, because of the safety of myself and my family. Yeah, right. More myself. Yeah, naturally. I can outrun these people. That's why I married her.
You picked a girl with shorter legs so that you could get away if you needed to.
I'm out.
But yeah.
I foot raced her on our first date, and when she lost, I said, that'll do.
Yeah. You went ring shopping the next day. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, lots of memorable scenes in this movie, I thought. I guess sort of a general statement to start with, I really liked all the scenes that had the coincidences. So it was like the 11/11 thing and the way that kept coming up, like the Black Flag shirt and how that kept coming up, and then the spiders like being in the song, and also like the one on the desk and everything. I really liked that I enjoy it when a movie gives you a reason to pay close attention, like with I guess it wasn't a movie, but with The Haunting of Hill House, where there were always the ghosts in the background. There was always something non-obvious going on in the scene. And I felt like this movie had that a lot too, which is a way of keeping me a lot more engaged with it.
Yeah, I think with having this for me, it was like almost too much. Like, you almost had to watch it again to catch all the extra things, which is, I think, you know, definitely done by design. You're not getting to catch all the you know, little cameo things or whatever throughout. But but I think I guess if I'm like if we're on scenes, right?
Yeah.
So I have to say, I mean, by far my absolute favorite scene was when you initially see like the Shadow family.
Oh, when the son just says there's a family in the driveway?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That whole scene from like
on point.
Yeah, and looking back, it makes sense on why the mom was so scared and wanted to call the cops so quick, because she knew what was going on.
So when I saw this movie in Austin, when that happened, like when you hear the son say like there's a family in the driveway, and it pans out to just them like standing there creepily in the shadows.
Yeah.
Someone in the movie actually said, "Oh my god!" like,
I love it.
Yeah, like they reacted for sure.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I love it when the movie creates a scene that just grabs everyone's attention simultaneously. And then it was like everybody in the theater was holding their breath after that for that whole scene. It was so good.
Sequence of events. I mean, and it's a relatively long sequence of events.
Yeah.
Like from when they show up to when, you know, the family gets away.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely, I don't know, it's long, but throughout that, like, you have them at the beginning, like, I mean, even like the details of like hurting the dad's leg, so like like his legs hurt throughout the whole movie now, and like he doesn't have the power behind, you know, being able to, just all that. I mean, it was just great, and that's a long scene to kind of like say that's my favorite, because it also includes like the dad in the boat with his shadow.
Yeah, when the doppelganger husband went into the boat propeller, that was next level, just as far as like detailed gore. That was so gross.
Yeah, it actually threw it, and it happened so quick though that it caught me off guard.
Yeah,
where like it was almost like a jump.
Yeah,
and I was like, "What the hell just happened?" Like, I had to say, "What the hell just happened to Katie?" She's like, "You just got pulled down." But
I couldn't eat spaghetti for a week.
No, I did. I mean, I couldn't either. No, it was definitely gory, and it was like, oh, that's a cool way for him to go. Yeah. And you also have that, like, I know I'm probably looking too much into it, but you also have like, is he actually dead, I guess, kind of thing, like, or did he just, his legs get made? He's like,
yeah, well, and you still didn't know at that point if they were like physical people, or if they were some sort of supernatural thing, or, you know, if they could even be stopped. And so to me that was kind of a big turning point in the movie, because it's like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of real brutal fighting. Then it's like fight to survive, and it's going to go until the end. And so that, I thought, was a good way of setting the scene for what was to come.
And it also, because up until this point, you don't really know if it's just this family, or what. But you have the communication between the dad and another person screaming, and it's like, oh, yeah, okay, that's gonna. There's a lot more out there.
Yeah.
But like still at that point, like I was thinking like, well, is it just a whole bunch of this family? Like you don't really know.
Oh, like multiples of them or something.
Yeah. But I mean, like then you have, I mean, just that whole scene until they got away. Like from when they see them to the driveway until they get away, it's like, okay, which is probably like a huge chunk of the movie, but it's like it was just on point. That was like a perfect horror scenario, you know.
Well, and then there's the anxiety of them driving up to the friend's house when you know that the friends have been killed by their like shadow family, but then you see him coming to answer the door, and you're like, holy crap, they don't know, they just got away, it was this big fight, and now they're about to walk right back into it. Like that was really intense. But I want to talk a lot more about the ending and kind of the overall meaning of the movie and the big twists and stuff. But one other scene I want to talk about first that got me on like the violent side again was when the mom had that final battle with her twin in that underground tunnel, and ends up like choking her out with her the chains around her wrist. Yep. Like that was super crazy and intense and hard to watch. And then you realize that the son was in the locker seeing it all go down. Yeah. Like that was probably one of the most intense sequences in the movie, and it was probably also the most quiet I've ever heard a theater, like as that was going on.
Yeah, it's It's definitely quiet when we watched it in our here, but that was because there's only one family with us.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
yeah, it was definitely like everything's coming together, and you're just like, oh, okay, like the animals coming out here, and like he was showing like hints of it throughout the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a really intense, really seemed choreographed scene. Like it was just, like almost like a kung fu fight scene.
Yeah, because it was almost like they were, and obviously they were drawing like the similarities of when she was doing the dance when she was younger, with that whole fight scene leading up to it. But yeah, it was going on and getting more and more desperate. So
yeah.
Well, did you have any other scenes, or you want to move on to the Indian?
We can move on.
Okay, so. As you mentioned before, there was the big twist, and the big twist is that the mom was actually the doppelganger version of the girl that went into the funhouse as a kid. And so the general premise of the movie was that there had been some kind of experiment that had gone on in the past, creating like soulless or shadow versions of people, and then they were somehow like tethered, and it was maybe government created or some organization had created them, and they were going to try and be used to control people on the surface of the earth while they lived in the tunnels under. And then the program was abandoned, and then over time they basically went crazy just being down there because they weren't like complete humans to start with, and then they lost it. So then there's a young girl who grows up to be the mom in the movie, who goes down to she gets lost in a fun house and then ends up going down into the tunnels under the fun house, because I guess they have those, and finds this other girl who looks just like her. What you find out is the big twist at the end is that the other girl actually choked her and then left her chained up downstairs, and then went off and took that girl's place in the normal society, and then grew up to be the mom, and who was in all of the stuff. And so the person that she's been fighting against this whole time was actually the normal version of herself that was kidnapped underground all those years before. And then the very final closing scene is just the helicopters going across the country, and you see that long line of people in red holding hands.
Yeah.
And the story there was that the girl who had been trapped down there from up above had kind of gone crazy, but also become like a religious leader, and had them all in these coordinated red jumpsuits holding these golden scissors, and they were going back to take their place in the world and to take back what they perceived as their lives from the people who had been living them on the surface. Mm-hmm. And she had worn that Hands Across America shirt when she was young, and so that was like the imagery that she was drawing from as like the big statement of how they were going to announce themselves to the world. So obviously, in the way I just described that, there were a ton of unanswered questions. But I wanted to ask specifically, because you brought it up a few times, what did you think about the twist, about when you find out that she was actually the girl who had been in the funhouse?
So I think like part of me is like I don't know, like if it needed to happen. Like I think it could have gone on without it. I mean, I think it definitely ties in, and it makes sense of why he did it. So it's basically kind of showing that they could have come up and been normal. I mean, kind of got along in normal day life. There's the quote, or they say something to the effect of like, but they were able to recreate everything, but you can't recreate a soul, basically. So I don't know. Like I could have gone either way with it. I don't think like that is what made me think that this movie was great.
Yeah.
I think it could have been like, still a whole shadow, people that knew what was going on, and still like, I don't know. It could have still worked out. I think the reason why it does help, and why the twist does help, if they come out with a follow-up movie to this, to see how it happens, like what goes on
like
now.
A prequel?
Because well, I don't even know if it's prequel, but more as like a sequel of what's gonna happen, because the boy kind of knows what's happening with the mom, and like because the movie ends with him like looking at her, and so it's like Oh, I bet they could come up with something.
Yeah. So
After.
that was one thing that stood out to me a lot watching it again, was that they were very deliberate about showing kind of early that there was something different about her. And so you see, like we mentioned before, that scene in the friend's house where she's like brutally murdering one of the daughter's doppelgangers, and the son has walked in and sees her doing it, and then he's looking at her, and she looks like one of the crazy people, like she's covered in blood and she's like murdering brutally. And so you're thinking like, how much difference is there really between her and one of those people? And I had thought at first that was all just to accentuate the fact that like that's in everybody, that the way that you're brought up or the environment you come from shapes you, and given different circumstances people can behave very, very differently. And so I thought that was just kind of leading to that overall theme of the movie, so I wasn't necessarily expecting the twist at the end, but I did think it was an interesting way to go with the story. And the first time I saw the movie, that didn't make a lot of sense to me, and it didn't feel like a very satisfying twist. But going back and seeing it again and thinking about the role that it played in the overall themes of the movie, made it fit a little bit better. And also the way they kind of set it up throughout the movie made me appreciate it a little bit more.
I got you.
So,
but I could definitely see that too. I think, I mean, that definitely makes sense. I think it definitely helps tie in all of the kind of questions, and because like you were saying, I was thinking the exact same thing throughout the movie, that it's in us, or that that we can easily turn into something like that. The monster inside is what I was thinking, but then they add that, and it's just like, oh, okay, here we go.
And that said, I mean, there were still a lot of unanswered questions, like where did all the scissors and red jumpsuits come from? How did that one girl coordinate everyone across all the tunnels, like across the country? Were they all supposed to be connected, or did they just like have their own subreddit, or how did that go down? And if she knew the way out the tunnel through the fun house, why didn't she just like leave at some point?
Right. And
like, why were the friends' doppelgangers in the same vacation location as theirs? And not near their real home? Like, there were a bunch of things about it that didn't make sense. And I think that a lot of it comes back to, or might have been answered by, if we had known more about that program and how those people underground were actually linked to the people above ground. That might have made it all make a lot more sense. But I just, because I walked out after, because I saw it with Leo, and we talked for a long time trying to like piece all that together, and it was really nice that someone else had the same questions, because it's like I didn't just miss something. It really was, I think, purposefully vague. But that said, I do think that the point of the movie was like a much larger statement that it was trying to make, rather than necessarily getting down to the minutia of the details of the plot.
That's a good point.
And
I don't know what minutia means, Daniel.
My bad. But yeah, so just in general, I guess, with Jordan Peele, you always think there's going to be social commentary. I mean, like with Key and Peele, that's what the whole show was.
Right.
Get Out obviously had a ton of that. And so you went into this movie expecting it as well. And I think that I don't have it like fully sorted out yet, and I haven't read a lot about it because I kind of wanted to have some time to think without like just being directed one way or another. But I think that at the heart of the movie is just the idea that people have really different experiences based on the life that they've been born into, and that American society can be a really different experience for different people in different circumstances. So what you're brought up in forms a lot of who you are and how you see the world. And so people who are born into a situation where they have advantages and support and opportunity feel like things in general are actually pretty fair, because they were able to get where they wanted to be, and it was attainable. Whereas there are people who are born into a situation without any of that, and they probably feel like the system isn't fair, and they see those people who think that it is as being like condescending or undeserving, or not understanding the challenges that they go through. So I think there's probably also some references to like slavery, like in the historical roots of that. Like people put a system in place and then abandon it, and then the descendants of those people really had to fight through a lot of like artificial stuff that was just sort of left there, and we're sort of on the bad side of things afterwards. So anyway, I think there was probably a lot more to it than that, and there's probably a much more articulate point behind it, but that's sort of the vibe that I took away from the movie after thinking about it for a while.
And yet again, we have another podcast where Daniel knows what he's talking about, and old Tom sitting here thinking, "Man, I really wish that Lil Rel was in this movie."
Yeah, he was like one of the best parts of Get Out.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that you did that, and I'm also like curious on what our listeners have to say about like what they think. So, if you want to send in what you thought about it, we can have Daniel reply back to you, so you guys can talk intelligibly. Yeah, and if you want a joke, I can tell you. You know what I mean?
Tell me a joke.
No, I mean like the listener.
Oh, it's not like an on-demand thing.
I'll tell you a joke.
Yeah.
Tom's on his life.
That's not entirely true.
Oh, that's true. Anyway,
there are parts of your life that are heartbreaking, not funny.
Yeah, that's true. It's 50-50 sad and laughing. But I think overall, like, this movie, I think met my expectation of a follow-up to Get Out.
Yeah.
I think that I wasn't expecting something bad, but like I talked about before, but the sophomore slump.
Yeah.
Where it's like is it going to be, it happens to musicians quite a bit.
Yeah.
So it's, there's a little bit of fear there, but no, I mean, it was great. Like, I will definitely buy this movie when it comes out and recommend it to people. And like, if you don't want to watch it and you don't like it, that's fine. That's your prerogative, but you're racist and I hate you.
Yeah. And you're wrong about everything in life. You probably married the wrong person. If you have kids, they're not going to grow up normal. And you don't love, like, you probably own a cat. I was going to say, like, if you have,
your family lives in a tunnel.
Yeah, they should be so lucky. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening. So yeah,
just pause real quick. Yep. I just want to make an official statement.
All right.
I want everyone to know this. I'm gonna lock my phone. This is an official statement. You all heard it from me first.
All right.
And only me. There's a musician out there. His name is Clarence James. I think he's actually based out of Austin.
Okay.
Believe it or not, there's musicians down there. He's gonna be the next big thing.
Think so?
Yeah.
Like,
specifically, he has a song called "Ronson Princess."
Okay.
And it slaps. So I'm calling it now. What's today say? April 9th, 5:51.
Yeah.
Watch out for this guy. He's gonna be it.
Okay.
Coming up.